Have you ever wondered why the more we chase after someone, the more that person seems to pull away? Why is it that when we show too much interest, the other person simply disappears? Today, we're going to dive deep into the teachings of Napoleon Hill and discover how to turn indifference into magnetism, but not in the way you might think. Before anything else, I need to be honest with you. This isn't just another one of those superficial pieces of content that promise magic formulas to win someone over. What we're going to explore here is much deeper. It's about how you relate to yourself, how your internal patterns create your external reality, and how the true power of attraction is born from a place you may have never considered. Napoleon Hill, in his studies of the human mind and success, discovered something revolutionary. Our external reality is always a reflection of our internal reality. When he said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve," he wasn't just talking about money or a career. He was revealing a universal law that applies to every aspect of life, including our relationships. So if he's ignoring you, if he seems distant, if you feel like you can't reach him emotionally, the first question shouldn't be, "What is he thinking?" but rather, "What is happening inside of me that is creating this reality?" Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Often when someone ignores us, our first reaction is to intensify our efforts. We send more messages, try to get more attention, and make ourselves more available. It's as if we believe that by doing more of the same, the result will somehow be different. But Hill taught us that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. What actually happens is a fascinating psychological phenomenon. The more desperate energy you project towards someone, the more you push that person away. Why? Because desperate energy is an energy of scarcity, of neediness, of internal emptiness. And people unconsciously feel this. They pull away not necessarily from you, but from the heavy energy you are emanating. This is where the first trick comes in, which isn't a trick at all, but a fundamental shift in perspective. True power lies in becoming someone you yourself couldn't walk away from, someone so interesting, so whole, so full of purpose that you naturally attract others, without effort, without manipulation, without games. Hill spoke about the concept of a definiteness of purpose. He found that people with a clear and defined purpose emanate an irresistible magnetic energy, not because they are trying to attract someone, but because they are so aligned with who they are and where they are going that they become naturally attractive. Think about the people who have fascinated you most in your life. They probably weren't the ones who were always available, always agreeing with everything, always adapting to your moods. They were people who had their own light, their own rich and interesting inner world, their own dreams and ambitions, people you respected precisely because they respected themselves. Now let's dive into something that could be revolutionary for you. Your relationships are perfect mirrors of your relationship with yourself. Napoleon Hill discovered that our subconscious mind is constantly creating situations that confirm our deepest beliefs about ourselves and what we deserve. If you have a pattern of attracting emotionally unavailable people, people who ignore you or are inconsistent, stop for a moment and ask yourself, how do I treat myself? Do you ignore yourself when you need attention? Are you inconsistent with your own needs? Do you treat yourself as if you are less important than others? This isn't a question meant to blame you, but to empower you. Because if you are creating these patterns unconsciously, it means you also have the power to change them consciously. Hill taught about the power of autosuggestion, the practice of reprogramming our subconscious mind through conscious, repeated affirmations. But there's something he observed that few people talk about. Before your mind can accept new programming, it needs to release the old programming. And this involves a process I call conscious emotional healing. Think about all the moments in your life when you felt rejected, ignored, or unvalued. Those moments created emotional wounds that, if left unhealed, become magnetic patterns. You unconsciously attract situations that reactivate these wounds because your subconscious mind is trying to give you opportunities to heal. The man who is ignoring you might actually be a teacher in disguise. He is showing you where you still need to heal your relationship with yourself, where you still believe you need to earn love, instead of simply knowing you are worthy of it. Here is one of the most powerful secrets Hill discovered. When you stop trying to control the behavior of others and focus on healing your own internal patterns, something magical happens. You begin to emanate a completely different energy, an energy of wholeness, of self-love, of someone who knows their own worth. Let's do a practical exercise right now. Close your eyes and think about the last time you felt truly loved and valued, not necessarily by another person, but by yourself. Maybe it was when you achieved something important, when you helped someone, when you did something creative. How did you feel? What was your posture, your energy, your presence like? That is the energy that naturally attracts. Not because you are trying to attract, but because you are being authentically yourself, radiant, whole, alive. The second trick is this: start cultivating that energy regardless of anyone else's behavior. Start treating yourself with the same affection, attention, and respect you would like to receive. This isn't selfishness, it's emotional self-responsibility. Hill discovered that successful people, in any area of life, have one thing in common. They take full responsibility for their experience. They don't wait for external circumstances to change to feel good. They create their inner well-being first, and then that well-being is reflected in their external reality. When you stop making someone else's love the source of your self-esteem, you become irresistible. Not because you're playing games or using techniques, but because you're emanating the most attractive energy there is, the energy of someone who truly loves herself. Now, let's explore one of the most misunderstood concepts when we talk about relationships: detachment. Most people confuse detachment with indifference, but Hill taught us that they are completely opposite energies. Indifference is born from fear and protection. Detachment is born from love and trust. When you are attached to the outcome, when you need him to answer your messages, when you need him to show interest, when you need him to validate your feelings, you are operating from an energy of neediness. And neediness, as contradictory as it may seem, pushes away the very thing we desire most. Why does this happen? Because when you need something from someone, you unconsciously place that person in a position of power over you. You diminish yourself. You become smaller, less interesting. Hill called this a poverty mindset, the belief that there is a scarcity of love, attention, and connection in the world. True detachment is different. It's when you can love someone, appreciate their company, enjoy moments together, but without making it a necessity for your happiness. It's when you can think, it would be wonderful if this worked out, but I'll be okay either way. This shift in mindset creates a fascinating phenomenon. You become emotionally free. And free people are irresistible because they don't drain energy from others. They add value, lightness, and joy. I'll tell you something that might sound paradoxical. Often the person ignoring you is doing so unconsciously because they feel your emotional neediness. They sense that you need them to feel complete, and this creates an invisible pressure that pushes them away. It's not malicious. It's an emotional survival instinct. When you develop what Hill called an abundance mindset, the certainty that there is enough love in the universe for everyone, including you, something magical happens. You stop chasing and start naturally attracting. But how do you develop this mindset in practice? First, you need to recognize that your need for external validation is masking an internal disconnection. You are looking outside of yourself for something that can only be found within. Hill discovered that our subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between reality and imagination. This means you can start to feel loved and valued right now, regardless of any external situation. How? Through a process he called creative visualization combined with emotion. Every day, for at least 15 minutes, visualize yourself being treated in the exact way you'd like. But don't visualize a specific person doing this. Visualize yourself receiving this love from the universe, from life, from your higher self. Feel the emotion of that experience. Allow your body to register what it feels like to be truly loved and valued. Over time, this internal feeling becomes more real to you than any external lack. And when that happens, You automatically attract people who resonate with this energy of love and abundance. The third trick is this: start treating yourself like the most important person in your life, not in a narcissistic way, but in a loving and responsible way. When you do this consistently, you naturally attract people who also treat you that way. There is something profoundly powerful in feminine energy that our modern society has taught us to devalue: the ability to simply be, instead of constantly doing, to deserve love. Napoleon Hill, in his studies on leadership and influence, observed that the most magnetic people weren't necessarily those who tried the hardest, but those who had mastered the art of authentic presence. When a man ignores you, the natural impulse is to do more. More messages, more attempts to connect, more efforts to get his attention. But there is a completely different approach based on what Hill called quiet power: the ability to influence through being, not doing. Think about the women you most admire in history or in your life. They probably weren't the ones who were always trying to please or desperately seeking attention. They were women who had a natural magnetic quality. They knew who they were, honored their emotions, and weren't afraid to take up their space in the world. This is a truth that can completely transform your experience. Your feminine energy, when in its natural and healthy state, is irresistibly attractive. Not because you're trying to seduce someone, but because you are connected to your own life force. What does it mean to be connected to your life force? It means honoring your emotional cycles instead of trying to be positive all the time. It means expressing your needs clearly instead of expecting others to guess them. It means creating beauty and nourishment in your life because it feeds you, not because you hope to impress someone. Hill discovered something fascinating about human nature. We are naturally drawn to people who are living authentically, who aren't trying to be anything other than what they are. There is a relaxing and magnetic quality to this authenticity that touches something deep within all of us. When you stop trying to be who you think he wants you to be and start being profoundly who you are, something powerful happens. You stop competing with other women and start recognizing that each one has her own unique essence. You stop comparing yourself and start celebrating your particular qualities. The fourth trick is this: cultivate a life so rich and interesting that you naturally have a lot to offer. Not in the sense of sacrificing yourself for others, but in the sense of being so connected to your own vitality that it naturally overflows into joy, creativity, and wisdom. Hill spoke about the concept of added value. Successful people always add value to any situation they are in. In the context of relationships, this means being someone whose company enriches the lives of other people, not because you are trying to please, but because you are living fully. Imagine for a moment, if you had a life so interesting, relationships so rich, and projects so exciting that you barely had time to worry about whether someone was giving you attention or not. How would that change your energy? How would that change the way you present yourself to the world? This isn't a suggestion to pretend you don't care. It's an invitation to genuinely create a life so abundant in meaningful experiences that the attention, or lack thereof, from one specific person doesn't determine your emotional state. Now let's dive into something Hill discovered through his extensive studies of human psychology. Men and women process attraction in fundamentally different ways. Understanding this isn't about manipulation, but about more effective communication and deeper connection. The male mind, according to Hill's observations, responds powerfully to what he called an inspiring challenge. Not a manipulative challenge or psychological games, but the natural challenge that comes from a woman who has her own life, her own dreams, her own strong identity. When you are always available, always agreeing, always adapting your plans to his, you unconsciously remove the element of pursuit that is psychologically stimulating for most men. Not because they are bad or shallow, but because the human mind, male or female, values more what requires some emotional investment to be won. Think about it. The things you value most in your life are probably those that required some effort, growth, or overcoming to achieve. The same principle applies to relationships. Hill found that we value more what we invest energy and attention in. But here's the crucial difference. I'm not suggesting you play games or become artificially difficult. I'm talking about you developing a life so rich and interesting that you naturally have priorities beyond any specific relationship. When a man realizes you have a life of your own, you have dreams that excite you, relationships that nurture you, projects that challenge you, he sees you not as someone who needs him to be complete, but as an interesting person who chooses to include him in her life. This change in perspective is transformative. Hill observed something fascinating about male nature. Men are naturally drawn to women they perceive as a prize, not in a superficial sense, but in the sense of someone who is clearly valuable, who values herself, and who has high standards for how she allows herself to be treated. This doesn't mean being arrogant or unapproachable. It simply means having genuine self-esteem that is reflected in your choices, in how you spend your time, in what kind of treatment you accept or do not accept in your life. The fifth trick is to develop what Hill called a magnetic presence, the quality of someone who is so comfortable with herself that others feel naturally drawn to be near her. This presence comes from a combination of self-confidence, genuine kindness, and an energy that says, "I am good on my own, and if you want to be part of my life, you're welcome, but my happiness doesn't depend on it." When you develop this presence, something interesting happens. You stop tolerating behaviors that don't serve you. You don't get angry or dramatic. You simply stop investing your energy in situations that are not mutually nurturing. And here is the paradox. The less you need someone's attention, the more attractive you become to that person. Not because you are playing games, but because you are emanating the most attractive energy there is, genuine contentment with who you are. Hill discovered that successful people in any area have one characteristic in common. They don't waste energy trying to control external variables. They focus all their energy on becoming the best version of themselves and trust that this will attract the right opportunities and relationships. There is a form of communication that goes far beyond words, and Napoleon Hill dedicated years to studying this phenomenon. He discovered that we constantly transmit information through what he called thought vibrations, emotional energy that people feel intuitively, even when they can't consciously explain it. When you are desperate for someone's attention, you are transmitting a vibration of neediness that is perceptible on a very subtle level. People feel it in the way you speak, in the tension in your body, in the urgency behind your words, even when you try to hide it. On the other hand, when you are genuinely at peace with yourself, when you feel whole regardless of any external situation, you transmit a vibration of abundance that is irresistibly attractive. People want to be around this energy because it makes them feel good. Hill discovered something revolutionary. You can profoundly influence how people feel in your presence through the inner work you do on yourself. It's not manipulation, it's elevation. When you elevate your own emotional vibration, you automatically elevate the vibration of any environment you are in. Let's explore a practical concept: communication through absence. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send someone is through what you don't do. When you stop chasing, stop trying to force a connection, stop being constantly available, you are communicating something very important. I value myself enough not to beg for attention. This is not a cold or calculated strategy. It is a natural expression of self-love. When you truly love yourself, you naturally protect your energy. Invest your time in people and activities that value you, and don't waste emotion trying to convince someone that you are worthwhile. The sixth trick is to master the art of being memorable through the quality of your presence, not the quantity of your availability. Hill observed that magnetic people have the ability to leave others wanting more, not because they are manipulative, but because each interaction with them is so rich and meaningful that it naturally creates a desire for more connection. How do you create this quality of presence? First, you stop trying to impress and start expressing yourself authentically. You share your real thoughts, your interesting experiences, your unique perspectives on life. You become someone worth talking to because you have something genuine to offer. Second, you learn to be completely present in moments of connection. Instead of always thinking about the next date, the next message, what will happen next, You allow yourself to be fully there. This total presence is rare and precious in today's world of constant distractions. Hill also discovered the importance of what he called a healthy personal mystery. This doesn't mean being secretive or artificially mysterious, but rather having a rich inner life that isn't completely accessible right away. Having hobbies, interests, relationships, and experiences that are yours, that make you an interesting and complex person. When someone feels that you have layers, that there is always something more to discover about you, it creates a natural curiosity. People are drawn to depth, to complexity, to individuals who cannot be easily categorized or fully understood on the first encounter. The most powerful communication you can have with someone who is ignoring you is to live a life so interesting and full that your energy naturally draws attention. Not because you are trying to get attention, but because you are genuinely shining. We now arrive at the heart of Napoleon Hill's philosophy. True transformation always begins from the inside out. If you want to change your external reality, including how people respond to you, you first need to identify and transform the subconscious beliefs that are creating your current patterns. Hill discovered that we carry within us a set of beliefs about love, relationships, and our own worth that were formed very early in our lives. These beliefs operate like invisible programs, automatically attracting situations that confirm them. If you have a pattern of attracting emotionally unavailable people, for example, there is a subconscious belief at work. Perhaps, I have to fight for love, or interesting people are always hard to get, or I only feel alive when I'm chasing someone who doesn't fully want me. These beliefs are not your fault. They were formed as emotional survival mechanisms during past experiences. But Hill taught us that what has been learned can be unlearned, and what has been programmed can be reprogrammed. The seventh trick is to take an honest inventory of your beliefs about relationships and begin the process of consciously replacing them. Hill developed a powerful technique for this that he called conscious autosuggestion. First, you identify a limiting belief. For example, I have to try very hard to deserve love. Then you create a new belief to replace it. I am naturally worthy of love and respect. But here is the crucial part that many people miss. You don't just repeat the new belief mentally, you need to feel the corresponding emotion. Hill discovered that our subconscious mind responds much more to emotion than to logic. So when you affirm, I am naturally worthy of love, you need to imagine yourself being treated with love and respect, and allow your body to feel what that experience would be like. This reprogramming process needs to be done consistently. Hill recommended at least twice a day, preferably right after waking up and before going to sleep, when the subconscious mind is most receptive. But he also emphasized that real change takes time, usually between 30 to 90 days of consistent practice. During this process, you may notice internal resistance. Your old mind might whisper, that's not true, or you're deluding yourself. Hill taught that this resistance is normal and is actually a sign that you are tampering with deep programming. The key is to persist with compassion for yourself. You are literally recreating your emotional identity, and this requires patience and kindness with yourself during the process. As you do this inner work, something interesting happens externally. You start making different choices automatically. You naturally stop accepting crumbs of attention. You automatically distance yourself from situations that don't honor your new sense of self-worth. You attract people who resonate with your new energy. Hill observed that when we change internally, we don't need to force external changes. They happen naturally. People respond to our new energy, new opportunities appear, and situations that once caused us suffering simply stop making sense in our lives. This process is not about becoming perfect or never feeling insecure again. It's about developing a solid foundation of self-love that remains stable even when external circumstances are challenging. Napoleon Hill made a profound observation about truly magnetic people. They aren't attractive because they are trying to attract someone, but because they are living a life so rich and meaningful that they naturally radiate contentment and vitality. This is perhaps the most important distinction between manipulation and authentic magnetism. When you build a life that you genuinely love, a life full of purpose, creativity, meaningful connections, and personal growth, you automatically become interesting. Not in a superficial sense, but in the deep sense of someone who has stories to tell, wisdom to share, and positive energy to offer. Hill discovered that successful people in any field always have what he called a definite purpose, something that motivates them beyond their immediate needs. When we apply this to relationships, it means that truly attractive women have dreams, goals, and passions that go beyond finding or keeping a relationship. This doesn't mean that relationships aren't important to you. It means they are a valuable part of an already rich life, not the primary source of your fulfillment or identity. The eighth trick is to consciously build a life so interesting that you become naturally curious about yourself. When you are genuinely excited about your own projects, growth, and experiences, that energy is contagious. Think about it. When was the last time you did something that truly excited you, regardless of whether anyone was paying attention or not? When was the last time you got lost in a creative activity, learned something completely new, or challenged yourself to step out of your comfort zone? Hill observed that personal stagnation is one of the greatest enemies of magnetism. When we stop growing, stop challenging ourselves, stop seeking new experiences, we begin to emanate an energy of boredom or hopelessness that, while subtle, is perceptible to others. On the other hand, when you are constantly evolving, whether it's learning a new skill, working on a personal project, cultivating new relationships, or exploring new aspects of yourself, you naturally become someone interesting to be around. But here's the secret Hill discovered. This energy of growth and enthusiasm cannot be faked. It has to be genuine. You can't pretend to be excited about life if internally you are empty or focused only on attracting one specific person. An irresistible life is built through small daily choices, choosing experiences that nurture you instead of just distractions, investing in relationships that support you instead of just tolerating your presence, seeking challenges that make you grow instead of staying in your comfort zone indefinitely. When you live this way, something magical happens. You stop needing external validation because your life is already full of validating experiences. You stop feeling threatened by other women because you know you have your own unique gifts. You stop fearing rejection because you have a solid foundation of self-fulfillment. Hill also discovered that magnetic people have a specific quality. They are genuinely interested in others, not because they need something from them, but because they have a natural curiosity about the human experience. When you are fulfilled in your own life, you have the emotional space to truly see and appreciate other people. This shift from focusing on how can I make this person notice me to how can I add value to this interaction completely transforms the dynamic of any relationship. Napoleon Hill discovered something fascinating about timing in human relationships. There is a natural rhythm, almost like a dance, that governs how connections develop. Forcing this rhythm is like trying to make a flower grow faster by pulling on its petals. You destroy the very thing you are trying to cultivate. When someone ignores you, often what's happening has nothing to do with you personally. It could be the timing in that person's life, internal issues they are processing, or simply the fact that they are not on the same emotional rhythm as you at this moment. Hill taught that trying to force synchrony is one of the fastest ways to create resistance. It's like swimming against the current. You spend a lot of energy and make very little progress. On the other hand, when you learn to flow with the natural rhythm of things, you can achieve extraordinary results with much less effort. The ninth trick is to develop what Hill called superior emotional intelligence, the ability to read energies and respond appropriately, instead of reacting based on your insecurities or immediate needs. This means recognizing when someone is in an emotional space that doesn't allow for a deep connection, and instead of taking it personally, you simply step back gracefully and focus on other areas of your life. Not dramatically, not with anger, but with the wisdom of someone who understands that not every moment is the right moment for connection. Hill observed that successful people have a special ability. They know when to invest energy and when to conserve it. They don't waste emotional resources trying to force situations that aren't flowing naturally. In the context of relationships, this translates into a specific magnetic quality. You become someone who is present when the connection is mutual and natural, but who doesn't force or pressure when it's not. This approach creates a safe space that allows genuine interest to flourish. Think about how you feel when someone is constantly pushing for your attention versus how you feel when someone is genuinely available but without pressure. The difference is palpable, and we all naturally gravitate toward the second type of energy. When you stop chasing and start creating space for the connection to develop naturally, you allow the other person's genuine interest to emerge. Often, people pull away not because they aren't interested, but because they feel pressured to respond in a specific way or on a specific timeline. Hill discovered that the human desire for freedom is fundamental. When people feel their emotional freedom is being threatened, even subtly, they instinctively pull away. On the other hand, when they feel they can freely choose to connect without dramatic consequences, they often choose connection. This doesn't mean being passive or never expressing interest. It means expressing interest in a clean way, with no hidden agenda, no desperate need for a specific response, and without making your self-esteem dependent on the outcome. When you master this energetic dance, you become someone with whom it is easy and pleasant to connect. People don't feel they need to protect themselves from your energy because it isn't invasive or needy. Instead, they feel free to genuinely explore whether they want to deepen the connection. Hill also observed that this approach naturally filters out people who are not a good match for you. People who only respond to chasing or drama are not emotionally mature partners. By creating space for genuine connection, you attract people capable of healthy reciprocity. We have now reached the end of this deep journey through Napoleon Hill's teachings as applied to relationships, and it's time to integrate everything we've explored into a transformative understanding that can completely change how you experience love and connection. The final and most powerful trick is not a trick at all. It's a revolutionary truth. The most attractive person you can be is yourself, fully realized, deeply connected to yourself, and genuinely passionate about your own life. Hill discovered that there is a universal law operating in all aspects of the human experience. That which you are internally inevitably manifests externally. This means that if you want to attract unconditional love, you must first love yourself unconditionally. If you want to be treated as valuable, you must genuinely value yourself. When you truly integrate this truth, not just intellectually, but in every cell of your being, you stop looking outside of yourself for confirmation that you are worthy of love. You stop needing other people to complete you because you are already whole, and that wholeness is irresistibly magnetic. Think about all the times you felt most attractive in your life. They probably weren't moments when you were desperately trying to impress someone. They were moments when you were connected to yourself, confident in who you were, radiant with your own vital energy. This is the energy we want to consciously cultivate. Hill taught that we can consistently create the internal states we desire through deliberate practices of autosuggestion, creative visualization, and most importantly, through aligned actions that confirm our new identity. When you live as a woman who values herself, who has a rich and interesting life, who offers genuine value to the world, who does not tolerate mediocre treatment, you automatically become someone people want to know, want to be near, want to impress. But here is the final and most beautiful paradox. When you truly arrive at this place of personal fulfillment, you discover that you no longer need any specific person to notice or value you. You appreciate it when it happens, but your happiness does not depend on it. And ironically, it's exactly when you reach this place of emotional independence that you become more attractive than you have ever been. People feel your energy of abundance and want to be a part of it. They sense that you don't need them to be happy, and this makes them want to choose to be with you. Hill taught us that true success, in any area of life, doesn't come from getting specific things, but from becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts the experiences you desire. In the context of relationships, this means becoming the kind of woman who naturally attracts healthy, loving, and mutually nurturing relationships. Not because you're using techniques or strategies, but because you are emanating the qualities that make healthy relationships possible: self-love, emotional maturity, a clear purpose, and the ability to love without need. If he is ignoring you now, this might be the greatest gift he could ever give you: the opportunity to discover who you truly are when you're not trying to be who you think he wants you to be. The opportunity to build a life so rich that the attention or lack thereof from any single person does not determine your well-being. Use this moment not to win him over, but to win yourself over. Use this experience not to change him, but to transform yourself into the most radiant, fulfilled, and magnetic version of yourself. Because in the end, the right person for you will be naturally drawn to who you really are, not to a diminished version of you trying to please or impress, but to the authentic, powerful, and completely alive you. This is the true teaching of Napoleon Hill on relationships. Become unforgettable by being deeply, authentically, magnificently yourself.